What I've done is I've integrated some of my reflections and research in James Allen's work, as well as William Walker Atkinson, to weave it into a discussion on focus and concentration, more in relation to what we've been talking about in regards to prosperity, creativity, or artistic expression, innovation. I believe in looking at things from more of a integrated perspective. And one of the things that I really enjoy when it comes to James Allen's work is his integration between practicality as well as poetry, spirituality, Buddhism, Christianity in his books. One of the things that I also really admire about James Allen is what his wife Lily Allen spoke of when he had passed away. She said that James would never write about anything unless he had thoroughly tested and lived exactly what it was that he was going to write about. He was living his philosophy. So when the words were expressed, we saw the integration. For example, let's look at this quote here, where he states, "Life is more than motion. It is music. More than rest, it is peace. More than work, it is duty. More than labor, it is love. More than enjoyment, it is blessedness. More than acquiring money and position and reputation, it is knowledge, purpose, strong and high resolve." So you could see how deeply integrated he was. Fluidity of mind, as I like to call it. The ability to see different nuances between two poles. We call this the Law of Polarity when we discuss the Kabbalion, looked at from the perspective of its origins, which ties into Hermetic philosophy, in which spirituality and science and philosophy was at one time very integrated, seen as one. And inspired from Hermetic philosophy was the book The Kabbalion by the Three Initiates. It is even said that it was released by William Walker Atkinson under the Three Initiates, which then, who are the Three Initiates? Was it William Walker Atkinson and two others, or was it referring to Hermes Trismegistus, otherwise known as Hermes Thrice Great? A lot of William Walker Atkinson's work is also creative artistic expression based on practicality. Same with James Allen. So I want to discuss their information in relation to concentration and focus, because we all want more concentration and focus. I believe in harmonizing the mind, creative expression, as well as laser-sharp focus on specific, one thing at a time till completion. Harmonizing this allows us to not only have the creative ideas, but be able to express the creative ideas. Now, this is enormously powerful when it comes to entrepreneurship. If we have ideas or innovation, we still want to see these ideas all the way into fruition, into completion. If we're creatives in the performing arts, athletes, we have ideas, hunches, and inspirations. We want to be in what I would call creative flow, where ideas, hunches, and inspirations are received as a result of what we discussed, the first chapter of Prosperity by Charles Fillmore. We want to receive those ideas, and we also want to see them into completion, apply it, perform. So when I look back at James Allen and how he lived, as well as others that I am very inspired by, such as Neville Goddard, who was a dancer for many years and achieved mastery, we see some commonality. We see this theme of integration, integrating the reason with the creativity, the spirituality, and we see this deep peace as a result of it. William Walker Atkinson, actually, prior to writing these books, had honed his concentration and focus in the world of business. He had a successful business career, which then led him into getting admitted as an attorney, and was an attorney for a period of time in which he gained a lot of material success, but he felt that he was stressed and overwhelmed, and then he started to get more into the spiritual side of things and integrating. So we see this integration in his writing, so that's why I very much resonate with it. So let's get into further discussion. Now, James Allen says, "He shall work out his own salvation, whether he believes it or not. For he cannot escape himself, nor transfer to another the eternal responsibility of his own soul. By no theological subterfuge shall he trick the law of his being, which shall shatter all his selfish makeshifts and excuses for right thinking and right doing. Nor shall God do for him that which it is destined for his soul to accomplish for itself." So there we see this recurring theme, which we've been discussing and calling this purification of the mind. So we seem to show up in this existence here, and we go through this journey of developing ourselves and bringing ourselves attuned with this universal mind, spiritual mind. And from there, we receive hunches and inspiration, ideas. And our goal is to see them into fruition, see them into completion. One of the challenges that we may have is drifting, as Napoleon Hill would call it. Not actually being able to see that idea into completion. This is where we can see it as an opportunity. Look at it as a way to practice focus and concentration. One of the things that I had learned in my earlier stages from Brian Tracy was essentially, if you can get yourself to sit down and do something and see it all the way to completion, this would form a habit. And these habits would lay the foundation for your success. Think about any kind of innovation. It's a big project. We take that project and we break it down into sub-projects or tasks. And our goal is to show up each day and complete the tasks. A lot of it may seem kind of boring and mundane, but we want to look at it as an opportunity, because what we're actually doing when we're presented with this opportunity is we're practicing in a very practical way focus and concentration. While there are certain focus and concentration exercises that we can do, it's also important to recognize that we are every day presented by these focus and concentration exercises in the tasks we need to do, in the projects that we have. And after a period of time, we become very focused. We say self-discipline. We have a high degree of concentration. I believe we actually all have it. What we want to do is calibrate to it, recalibrate to it. So the process of purification of the mind also includes the ability to stay focused on one task at a time, stay committed to it, and see it all the way to completion. Now, I've been asked these questions many times, like, how does one do it? And the answer is it depends on where a person is on the journey. Perhaps the most granular is to just break it down in what we call the Pomodoro method, which is essentially working on something for 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break, doing it again for 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break, doing it again for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, doing it again for 25 minutes, 5-minute breaks. And this can include studying, this could include working on a project, this could be working on items on your task list, this could be cleaning your house, and not just seeing it as something that needs to get done, but actually an opportunity to practice focus and concentration. Because after a period of time, this becomes a habit. Now, the key with this is finding flow with it as well. So through the Pomodoro method, yes, you get things done. You're able to complete tasks. But you're also, when looked at from the perspective of finding meaning in it, you're also going to find flow in it. You'll be able to weave that meaning into other things. That's how I believe James Allen found his inspiration. Because I've been studying his work for a while, ever since I first came across As a Man Thinketh. And as I continue to go through this work, I see this recurring theme that he peppers in there all the time. He says, "And now he casts from him one after another, his opinions and speculations, and commences to live the life of perfect love towards all beings. With each opinion overcome and abandoned as a burden, there is an increased lightness of spirit, and he now begins to realize the meaning of being free. The divine flowers of gladness, joy, and peace spring up spontaneously from the heart, and his life becomes a blissful song. And as the melody in his heart expands and grows more and more perfect, his outward life harmonizes itself with the inward music. So, what he's actually saying from one perspective, as I reflect upon it in relation to our conversation, is that this outer world is being molded by our inner world, and he's seeing the inner world as inner poetry or inner music, inner art. This is the recurring theme, and why I believe that William Walker Atkinson, when he was doing his business ventures, then it went into becoming an attorney, made the shift and integrating. I didn't feel that he left it because he was releasing books, and he released a lot of books, which takes a lot of focus and concentration, but he integrated that into the spirituality. And that's why his works, including the works of James Allen, including the works of many authors, or anybody that achieves a notable ability to harmonize the entrepreneurial spirit, which is a fusion of art and science, and be successful of it, those that actually have this integral perspective on reality. And it is expressed in their communication. So when we look at James Allen's work, we'll see the poetry behind it. But then when we look at it again, we also see the practicality behind it. So even though he says it in a very poetic way, what he's also saying is that we want to harmonize the inner and the outer. So the focus and concentration is designed to help us with these creative ideas to be able to express it and actually see it as complete. Like you sit down there and you learn how to perform a skill, and you practice it. You show up each day, and you maybe use a Pomodoro method or something like that, so that eventually what happens is you want to show up, you desire to show up, and you find bliss and flow in it, which, by the way, partially the reason why we experience that feeling of flow and we like it is because of a neurotransmitter, anandamide, that gets released as a result, which is sometimes referred to as the bliss molecule. When anandamide is released and binds to, I believe, CB1 or CB2 receptors, we experience bliss. We become engaged in what we're doing. And then what we notice is that we continue to express creatively. We maintain the flow, so we don't lose the creativeness. Because here's the key behind this. It's one thing to work on things and not feel inspired to do it. It's another thing to work on things from the perspective of inspiration, which he's referring to here. His outward life harmonizes itself with the inward music. And then he goes on to say, all the efforts he puts forth being now free from strife, he obtains all that is necessary for his well-being without pain, anxiety, or fear. He has almost entirely transcended the competitive laws, and the law of love is now the governing factor in his life, adjusting all his worldly affairs harmoniously and without struggle or difficulty on his part. So this is what we've been also discussing, Wu Wei, or effortless action, or being in the now, or being in flow. This is how we bring forth innovation from a perspective of constant hunches, inspirations, insights, and perspectives, ideas, never running out of ideas. This is how you maintain that creativity. And I'll speak from my experience as well, because what I had found in the earlier stages was I did come from that background of extreme force and hard work, and it did produce results. What I did find, however, is it was short-lived. It would result in me being unpleasant, stressed out, angry, frustrated, and it wouldn't last, and I wouldn't a lot of times find the creative ideas to be able to transcend past whatever obstacles were being revealed at that moment. For example, if it was a business problem that we were dealing with, I wasn't able to look at it from a different perspective because my mind was so rigid and fixed on one way of doing things that I didn't realize that by shifting perspective, I would be able to see it differently and thus find the solution. So then I realized the importance of integrating some of these concepts, which are articulated poetically and more in an artistic way, because what I believe happens is it stimulates a psychological change. So we psychologically release from the overly identified, fixed way of looking at things, and we go more into a lightheartedness. And then we do that activity, or we work on our project and see it all the way to completion, more from a place of flow. We still achieve it, we still complete it, but afterwards we feel more energized, we feel more inspired. Then, when I look back at everything, because I like to track everything, so there was a period where I was tracking my time and I still track key performance indicators. I'm able to look back and actually see that I produced way more, better quality, better quantity, from a more integration with spirit also. And this continues. So this is more of a nuanced path. It's the harmonizing of the inner and outer, and it is found through focus and concentration. So now let's get into some exercises that we can do, or we can take the essence of the exercise and integrate it in our day-to-day. And from this, I pulled some information from William Walker Atkinson's book, The Power of Concentration, which, by the way, I've done a discussion on. I'll put a link in the description to that. You can check that out. I recommend reading the book. And we'll weave it into how to apply this. So we can maintain more of a flow-based concentration. Because what we're emphasizing here is more of a lighthearted, unwavering, flow-based focus and concentration, rather than a force, stressing yourself out concentration, which for many people will be something where it's not sustainable. And then what ends up happening is it could lead to burnout and so forth. Knowing that we can get more performance, more yield, more output, and this could be more joyous. And the creative ideas and hunches and inspirations that we get as a result of maintaining this kind of lighthearted focus and flow translates into exponential results. For example, you're working on something. Let's say it's a business idea and you want to see it all the way to completion. So you're applying this and you believe that it's going to take you 10 or 15 steps to get there. Maybe you got to build a website, or maybe you got to work a business deal with a business partner, hire a few people, and so forth. You look at it from the perspective of what we're going to discuss in a moment, and you get into flow and you get started by doing those things. But then all of a sudden, an idea shows up in your mind to call somebody up, and that facilitates a bunch of partnership deals. And now all of a sudden, all this work that you thought you had to do has been transcended by somebody else who will partner with you and do that work for you. Now you've freed up a lot of time. The project is still seen all the way to completion. But what you did allow yourself to receive within is more of that intuition that guides you in that direction. So that's the power of these exercises. So to stimulate this, William Walker Atkinson says, everyone has two natures. One wants to advance and the other wants to pull us back. The one that we cultivate and concentrate on decides what we are at the end. Both natures are trying to gain control. The will alone decides the issue. So we're saying focus and concentration is the way to remove the mental chatter. So this is one, and we find within ourselves that we want to do something or we aspire to do something, but for whatever the reason may be, we may have internal conflicts surrounding it, drifting and so forth. That was discussed in Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil. So by recognizing that this is happening within us, we can neutralize and make this internal battle harmony as a result of saying the way is through focus and concentration. Because what that does is it brings us into the now, brings us back into the flow. So here are the lessons here, 3 of them. Now he says it a certain way, and then I'm going to reflect back on my experience, and I'm going to show you how I have integrated it and how it has helped me to achieve this internal harmony of creative flow plus focus and seeing things all the way to completion while constantly receiving within hunches, ideas, inspirations, creativity, and finding that I never run out of ideas. He says, life furnishes us the opportunity to improve, but whether we do it or not depends on how near we live up to what is expected of us. The first of each month, a person should sit down and examine the progress he has made. If he has not come up to expectations, he should discover the reason and by extra exertion measure up to what is demanded next time. Every time that we fall behind what we plan to do, we lose just so much, for that time is gone forever. We may find a reason for doing it, but most excuses are poor substitutes for action. So what he's referring to, first lesson, is inventory. This is one of the key elements of flow, which is having a goal, having a vision, and breaking it down into sub-goals, sub-visions, or parts that make up the whole. Clear goals at an abstract or granular level. So if we have a vision and a goal, and we feel overwhelmed by it, we could break it down into smaller goals. For example, business success of making X amount of dollars every month can be broken down into 5 or 6 projects in order to get the business going. And then those 5 or 6 projects can be broken down into tasks. And those tasks can be broken down into, here's what I'm going to complete in my Pomodoros, as discussed earlier. Now, we want to be, as he is saying here, looking at it from a perspective of key performance indicators. We want to be able to evaluate our progress every month or every week or whatever it is right for you. For me, I look at key performance indicators and what I do, and this has been a habit. Every day, there's some of them. There's some that I check on a weekly basis. There's some that I check on a monthly basis. And there's some that I check on a yearly basis. And these could be income goals or progress goals, whatever it is related to what you're looking to express. And even if, for example, you're putting together an artistic expression, like a painting, for example, you can say, my goal is to just do a little bit at a time of this painting until it's complete, if you work that way. Or, for example, let's say you are putting together a music compilation and you need to get a whole bunch of artists together, because I work with some individuals who have recording studios, and they're looking to put together a compilation. And there's all these aspects with making that deal happen, including coordinating with the artists, booking the time with them, the cover art, and so forth. Breaking it down into small tasks and saying, by the end of this week, I'm going to complete this task. By the end of next week, I'm going to complete the next task, and so forth. So that kind of clarity allows us to develop a certain level of focus and concentration. Now let's go a little deeper into it. Lesson number 2. He says, one of the most beneficial practices I know of is that of looking for the good in everyone and everything. For there is good in all things. So as we go back earlier, we said everyone has 2 natures. Part of us seems to want us to advance, and part of us seems to want us to hold back, which we recognize is past programming that may appear to hold us back, but we can change that to the subconscious mind work. What we want is to advance. Now, these can externalize in how we relate to people, environment, circumstance, information on the journey. So the practice then of focus and concentration is to value what is in front of us right now, the relationships, the resources, and so forth, and see them as part that make up the whole. So that means we find more presence in the task that we're doing. We enjoy it even more. And one of the things that I found to be really valuable is to actually find deep meaning in each of the tasks and each of the projects and each thing that I do each day, which is some way, somehow related to the vision, and the vision is related to all those areas of my life: personal life, business life, health, fitness, and so forth. Seeing the connections. And to see the benefit in all those things is to see the good in all those things, which then keeps the mind oriented. And as a result of it, we find ourselves practicing resourcefulness and opportunity. Connections are there. One of the things we do in entrepreneurship, I certainly discuss this to extensive detail in my entrepreneurial program, is we have relationships, we have resources, we have opportunities, and we connect them in interesting ways to bring forth more revenue sources, to overcome challenges that we have, operational challenges, and create new businesses to produce more success. All of these things are within our awareness. We want to be able to see these connections. And connections is a form of unity, as we've been discussing as well with prosperity, unity. And when we have this state of mind, or the perspective of unity, we're able to see the unity, which is the connection. So that's what he's referring to. He says, we encourage a person by seeing his good qualities, and we also help ourselves by looking for them. We gain their good wishes, a most valuable asset sometimes. We get it back, we give it out. The time comes when most all of us need encouragement, need buoying up. So form the habit of encouraging others, and you will find it a wonderful tonic for both those encouraged and yourself, for you will get back encouraging and uplifting thoughts. See, the reason why I'm including this in here is because so much of this mental chatter, the frustration that we have, which creates the internal conflict and turmoil in relation to focus and concentration, is a result of internal conflict that we have in our mind while we're doing things in relation to perceived competition or what somebody else is doing or what somebody else said, and all these things, conflict in our mind. If we see the good in people and we practice this, we have less conflict in the mind. If we have less conflict in the mind, it's easier to show up and be focused and concentrated on the thing that we're doing. See, as mentioned, we want to do this from a place of flow rather than a place of force. If we show up and force ourselves to stay committed on the task and see it all the way to completion, that may work for a period of time, but that's not an ideal way for a long-term way of bringing forth success after success after success, innovation after innovation after innovation. It is a result of the inner peace. He says in lesson 3, so that's number 2, to create inner peace within yourself in relation to others, in relation to yourself, which is the self-image stuff. When a person has this inner peace in relation to themselves, in relation to others, as by the way, I also want to add, in relation to environments, in relation to circumstance, in relation to information, as they do it, they will find themselves being more automatically focused and concentrated. Now, I'll give you some very practical ways of further integrating this in your day-to-day in a moment. Let's discuss lesson number 3. He says, let no day go by without practicing concentration on some familiar object that is uninteresting. He says, never choose an interesting object, as it requires less attention. The less interesting it is, the better exercise it will be. After a little practice, you will find you can center your attention on uninteresting subjects at will. The person that can concentrate can gain full control over his body and mind and be the master of his inclinations, not their slave. Now, this is a very interesting perspective, and it goes back to what I had learned from Brian Tracy when I was 25 years old. I also saw this in James Allen's work. I saw it in William Walker Atkinson's work, and I saw it in a lot of the work that I've been studying. And it's this idea of finding joy and happiness and meaning in areas of life where others wouldn't find that joy, happiness, and meaning, which really also was emphasized in the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I realized it's a skill. Why? Because so much of the journey is doing things that may seem repetitive. For example, if you're in fitness, you know that you show up and you do the same workouts. Maybe you adjust it through progressive overload and so forth, but you pretty much stick to a schedule. If you're an entrepreneur and you got your business up to a certain level where it's systematized, you show up and you do a lot of things pretty much on schedule. For example, in this channel here, I release 2 videos a week. I post to my Instagram. I've got my consulting sessions. I've got other things that I do in relation to other business projects, some of the things that I work on investing. But I pretty much show up each day, 5 days a week. I start working on it, see it all the way to completion, and I continue this journey. What would otherwise appear as very boring is actually not to me, because this right here I had learned and practiced and always encourage others to practice, which is I find deep joy and meaning in these activities, be it working on a spreadsheet, be it working on a creative expression, be it working on leadership. All of these things that we do are also sources of inspiration. And when we do it from a place of flow, when we find the joy in it, or the happiness in it, the meaning in it that is ideal, what ends up happening is we allow more creativity and inspiration to be received within, as mentioned earlier. Now, you could do this as mention, as he says here verbatim, as an exercise. You could pick, for example, doing the dishes, and even though it's uninteresting, something that you don't necessarily want to do, or doing the laundry or something like that, you can practice concentrating, doing it, and being in the moment and enjoying the sensations. And although it might not appear that you can find that joy in the beginning, you'll find it. I know I was able to do this with some activities like that as well. Find flow while doing the dishes. Now, the thing about this is you could do it from a perspective of practice with things like that. But what we're referring to here is the things that we need to do on the journey to produce the success. Look at all the things that you have to do each day and start to see it more from the perspective of, provided that you know you have to do the thing, I would suggest that we also want to keep into consideration some of the things of business leverage. For example, what can you really do with the things you got to do? You could optimize, do it better, you can delegate it, you can automate it, or you can eliminate it in part or in whole or in combination. But that's another discussion. However, in relation to the things you know you have to do, you can practice, and this is another way for me saying what I've been saying in my videos, maintaining the ideal state of mind. The ideal state of mind is a state of mind of automatic focus and concentration. So again, to reflect upon, let's integrate these exercises. So first is to take inventory, have the key performance indicators, and know the areas where you can improve on. This will help with concentration and focus, because when you know where you are going, you're automatically going to calibrate yourself over to going in that direction, both at an abstract and granular level. Next is to find the good in the tasks, the projects, the people around you, not just in the things that you do, but outside as much as you can, so you can have more inner peace, so you can harmonize what appears to be this one side of us in conflict and one side of us that wants to move forward towards our vision. And then number 3, to bring that all into what would otherwise appear as uninteresting tasks or projects that you have to do. Now, in the earlier stages, as you do this, this may seem different, but this is also related to transmutation. You're transmuting something which appears a certain way into something else. Now, why are we doing this? We're also doing this so that during the focus and concentration, we also receive within more of that inner connection-based hunches, inspiration, ideas. You'll notice this. And as a result, your creativity will continue to flow. Your concentration will continue to increase. Your focus will continuously be there because you genuinely want to be there, and you're seeing those things as an opportunity to cultivate these things we're talking about. And you'll understand that it's more of a fusion of both the science as well as the creativity, the artistic. And then we'll understand to a deeper level what James Allen was referring to here. And we'll constantly understand it when he says, life is more than motion. It is music. More than rest, it is peace. More than work, it is duty. More than labor, it is love. More than enjoyment, it is blessedness. More than acquiring money and position and reputation, it is knowledge, purpose, strong, and high resolve. And what we'll realize also is as we do this, we build this inner relationship, as we've been discussing, this internal pathway, and we travel in the internal pathway to higher levels of realization within ourselves. And some of the more esoteric stuff makes even more sense. And then as he says here, to conclude, and as the melody in his heart expands and grows more and more perfect, his outward life harmonizes itself with the inward music, which is the creativity, which is the artisticness, which is actually who we are. If you notice this, what do? We are conduits of expression, and we bring forth innovation, creativity, artistic expression. And that's the value we provide. And as we've been discussing, as we automatically express this value, it's a form of prosperity expression. We receive prosperity in return for that. So I trust you enjoyed this video and found it to be very helpful. We will be further discussing this idea of fusing things together, seeing things from multiple perspectives, both the creative and spiritual inspiration, as well as the integral practical application. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.